Let's start with the other big German team who's currently also on the road. They're on the road in Asia, Bayern Munich. They're playing a bunch of friendlies there. And, the entire focus seems to be still on Harry Kane and what's going on with that transfer. We're keeping this brief. I think the two clubs are very, perceived very close. I think 20 million euros apart. And that seems like something that can be bridged. Everyone seems to be really optimistic that the deal can be done for the Super Cup, which would be, of course, very exciting for us, right? So that is the latest in Harry Kane. I don't want to dwell too much on it because I think when it does happen, you're probably getting wall-to-wall coverage from us as it is. So let's just stick to what we just said. But I think what we do want to discuss in depth today is Sadio Mané, who is now officially gone. He's moved to Al Nassr in Saudi Arabia. Bayern Munich received 30 million euros. So essentially pretty much what they paid to Liverpool. On top of that, they actually save on all the bonus payments they had to make to Liverpool should he have worked out. So that's some nice savings. The eye-watering feat that really struck me was that Mané is going to make 40 million euros a season there, which is almost twice of what he made at Bayern, Stefan. It's an incredible amount of money. But I think we also have to ask ourselves, why did it ultimately not work out for Mané at Bayern? And I think you had some thoughts on this.
Yeah, some thoughts and some articles and some posts and some other videos, actually. I was on the Robona TV with a good friend of yours last week, actually.
Yeah. Adrian, shout out to him.
Absolutely, yeah. So you can go check out his channel if you're watching this on YouTube or listening on the podcast. So yeah, I feel like I've got kind of Sadio Mané's career etched in the back walls of my brain at this moment in time. But yeah, I don't know. I have felt compelled to kind of write a few pieces about Mané's time at Bayern over the last couple of weeks, just because we all knew he was moving on, and we all knew that the history books would probably be quite harsh on his year at Bayern. And I did kind of feel compelled to kind of point out that it wasn't all his fault. If you look at his numbers in terms of his goals to assists per 90 in the Bundesliga, they're considerably better than what he did in the Premier League last season and the year before that. In fact, they're better than just about all his last 5 or 6 seasons, aside from the 1920 season. I kind of came to the conclusion that he was kind of a victim of circumstance to a large extent at Bayern. When he was on the pitch and he was playing the position he wants to play, I think he did exactly what he thought he was being signed to do. And I think what any kind of reasonable person would expect Sadio Mané to do. He's not a number 9. He's not number 10. He's an inside forward who can use his pace and his abilities on the ball to create chances and score goals. He's not as clinical as number 9. He's perhaps not a playmaker like a winger or a central midfielder, but he's just one of those very modern inside forwards. And I think when he was played in that position, he was perfectly good for Bayern, which his numbers do point to. I think he can probably step away from his time at Bayern and look on paper and say, I did what I was asked to do. I think the only issue comes from the fact that I still kind of maintain that I don't think Bayern really knew what they were signing, or perhaps more accurately, didn't care what they were signing. Sadio Mané was a statement signing. He was a player that they could sign to kind of obviously compensate for the departure of Lewandowski, which we have to remember not only was also a very physical thing in the sense that they were losing a striker and they had to replace him, but it was also a kind of psychological thing for Bayern where they were losing a world star and they had to very quickly make it clear that they were still a destination for world stars, and that's what Sadio Mané was billed as. So, we all kind of got caught up in the buzz when he joined the club, and of course Mané joined, but having still been at the peak of his powers at Liverpool, so there was every intention that he would help them win the Champions League. But as the season kind of rumbled on, Nagelsmann kind of shifted his tactics a lot, and then of course Mané picked up a big injury, and I think it was in December, maybe the end of November, which ran all the way through to January. And by that point, as we documented quite well in this podcast, from week to week, Bayern, or most specifically Nagelsmann, was under a huge amount of pressure to kind of reintroduce a number 9 into that formation, and Choupo-Moting was slotted in. He did a great job. And I guess that was kind of all she wrote for Sadio Mané at Bayern, wasn't it? Once by the time he got back from his injury, there just wasn't a spot for him in that team.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you know what? I think another big factor is too that Bayern Munich have an abundance of wingers already under contract, right? There's Leroy Sané, there's Serge Gnabry, you can maybe even include Musiala, Kingsley Coman. Alphonso Davies also wants to play further up the pitch. He's been quite vocal about that. And Bayern Munich also need the funds to sign a certain English striker. And, if you can save 24 million euros in salary, and you can basically milk Saudi money, to get what you paid for a player, even though he's 1 year older. I think this was an easy way out for them. And so I think that is also falls into the category victim of circumstances, right? That Bayern Munich realized, okay, well, we can actually get something for this guy, which is probably not the case. Or maybe some of the other players that I mentioned wouldn't be willing to go to Saudi at this stage of their careers, right? So it's a really, 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 really difficult one. And I think at the end of the day, Mane was just an asset that they had plenty of. So they cashed in on it, and maybe to help them, bridge that final financial gap that there still is to Tottenham. Because I'm kind of curious now that this is done, that gives them a little bit of wiggle room, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And they've actually done a good job of selling players for considerable amounts of money. You had Sadio Mané to the Hernandez deal, then, that's more or less the fee that they would pay for Harry Kane to a large extent, give or take 10 or 20 million euros, at least what they're offering so far. So, yeah, you can totally understand why Tottenham would be kind of watching that deal go through and think, why are Bayern haggling over these final 15, 20 million euros? Just get the deal done, and let us all kind of move on from this saga. I'm sure Bayern Munich fans are probably thinking the exact same thing. I was kind of wondering it myself this afternoon, kind of thinking it's so fascinating how, and it's not just a Bayern thing, of course, it happens at every club, and we're watching these deals go through, and some of them are so tedious where it's, 80 million euros plus 6 million euros in future fees, which you just kind of wonder, like, is this just to show face on the negotiating table? Is this kind of prolonged, negotiation? Is the hope of saving 10 million euros worth the player joining the club a month later, and having 1 month less to prepare for the new season with his new team? I don't know. But again, it's not just a Bayern thing. It happens every summer at every major club. And it makes me kind of pull my hair out because it feels like it's just egos getting in the way of common sense.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a bizarre mentality, isn't it? At least it feels like it. Like you're haggling at some kind of market. But it is what it is. Stefan, the other big topic at Bayern Munich is, of course, Thomas Tuchel saying he still wants a number 6.